there is a route that I think that we should pursue, and that's simply following the spur rail line easement with power line. And why we're not pursuing that, I don't know. I mean, is there anything active on that? Is that something that's possible?
Lost me where you're talking about.
From Gunderson Lutheran to Camel Creek.
On track 76?
Yes.
Oh.
There's a 20-foot easement there. Why can't we put a bike path?
You can, but you work at the railroad. Usually the railroads want you to be about 50 feet off the center line of their railroad.
Usually, but not always.
No, I mean, it was a major undertaking to get the trail underneath the overhead on the far south side next to the, you have the railroad, Camel Creek, and the overhead all come together.
Anything with bikes is a major undertaking.
And railroads, any of the railroads major. I'm not saying it can't be done, and we should look at it.
Thank you.
Write it down, write it down.
You know, that should be on the long range plan.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that it's actually something that could be done fairly inexpensively relative to the time.
The regional bike plan, and I don't know if we have it on here, has it from Main Street up north to the golf course at Forest Hill, because there's a lot of right-of-way on the west side of the railroad tracks. Just another little link to try to get you around going down Mosey Boulevard.
And a little pressure and some community involvement in the railroads, especially a spur line, which is not a major traffic line. We can make that happen. And I think that would serve to provide a car-free, dedicated bike route that would complete this pathway through the city of La Crosse from what we have a sort of a hodgepodge way to get there now, and we will have a better route in the future, but that is the final piece of the puzzle to get us a direct straight shot through the south side of La Crosse. So I hope we can look that way.
I appreciate that. Thank you. One of the things that we're done talking about doing, if we get some of that 60% out riding that aren't riding now, those are 60% that now become advocates for more trails, for more funding, for some of these other things. And so the more people that ride, the more money that starts becoming available, because they're asking for it, and there's more people asking for it. When it was only the 1% asking, who cared? Now we get 10% asking. Well, that's pretty cool. And we get another 60%. That'd be really good. That's what we're trying to do.
What kind of special events could we have to include all these new people in? Like a bicycle parade or some kind of other educational thing?
Something that it feels comfortable for them. That's the festival, they come down. That's why just opening streets up, letting people come down and getting walkers and pedestrians working together. They're different, but they are both non-motorized. They're both people who want to be able to use the streets in other ways, and getting them to recognize that they have a common goal here at that also.
My main goal is to change the bus system so it's direct instead of zigzag, and then meets up with neighborhood vans and maybe those bikes to rent at bus stops. But changing the bus system would have ramifications for all these other issues. And the first point I always make politically is transit and bikes reduce traffic, so it saves more money than it costs, so we can always afford it.
And you've got Dave's comments on his little
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments that you would like us to, that you want everyone else to hear, or questions that you want to make sure you've answered?
Yeah. Definitely. That you guys are doing a great job, but for the most part, please stop, because for two reasons. First off, that I think practically everyone is going to look at these numbers and say, oh my God, millions of dollars. And I'm one of those people, because I am a taxpayer, which is painful to say. So, I mean, if this is going to be 1%, let's say, more taxes that I have to pay, like that's 1% more taxes that I have to pay. I'm one of those A-class bicyclists, so I'm probably not best qualified to say this. But on the other hand, my second reason to say please stop is that when you put in bike lanes, when you put in these facilities off to the side, what you're really saying is, here bicyclists, here's pedestrians, here's this thing off to the side, because you're not real traffic. What that's saying is that bicycling is not the normal way to get around. There's only one proper place for a bicycle, in my opinion, and that's in the street. Okay, the reason they're called shoulders is because they're off to the side, right? You know, like it's not a real form of transportation. And the city can't encourage people to bike in the street, apparently. Only we can. Like, if fear is really what's keeping people off the street, that's something that we can overcome. Fear can be overcome with willpower. Like all of these plans, like encouragement, enforcement, that's just carrot and stick. At no point in that planning do we actually have any agency over our own activity. So the only way to get more people bicycling reliably, like yes, you can do it with millions and millions of dollars in things that make bicycles off to the side, and then as soon as they stop getting funded, you stop riding, stop biking again. Or we can make bicycling a normal way to get around by being in the street assertively. We can do it not just as individuals but as groups. By being in the street assertively, by refusing to be intimidated. Maybe even if we say, no, we don't actually need these millions of dollars in things spent. We don't need these extra traffic lights that are going to slow down traffic. Maybe the jerk in the pickup truck is going to say, hey, those bicyclists just saved us millions of dollars. I'm not going to, veer into them and drive them off the road. Maybe. That's, like, we have to think of bikes as being a normal way of getting around, not being this thing that has to be accommodated.
Thank you. I will remind you that Amsterdam has 30% of its people riding to work, and it's almost all in separated facilities. So what works? What are we going to work here? I would like the world that you're talking about to happen. How do we get from this world to that world? We do it, I believe, in steps. And part of the steps we're talking about is getting that 60% out there riding. One of the things Portland found, as they increased their ridership from like 1 or 2% up to 6% of the trips, was that as the number of bicycles on the road went up, the number of the crash rate for bicycles went down. That's because the more bicycles that are out there, the more drivers respect that there are bicycles out there. And they start seeing them. When the driver is going along and they see just one bike out there, say, well, that fool going on the road here, he should be off to the side. When every block there's 2 or 3 bikes, that becomes part of what's out there, and drivers, the driver culture changes. And so getting more people out riding, however we do it, is going to make it safer for everybody. Yes, ma'am?
I just wanted to say that I am committed to a car-free lifestyle as much as possible, and one of the reasons that I can do that is I have a heavy Dutch cargo bike, and it is a very heavy bicycle,